its fullness and completeness. I invite Aaron's daughter Sherry and friend John Neufeld to come up and offer their tributes.
From time to time, people have commented to me that they considered my father wise. There were times that I thought that as well. In fact, I once confronted him about this reputation he had for wisdom, and he told me his secret, which I will share with you now. He told me this: don't say too much. If you keep talking, people will find you out. In the spirit of this advice, I will keep my tribute short. For the past few years, my father has been writing his memoirs. He hadn't finished, it was still very much a rough draft, but we'd had a chance to discuss it last summer. He came to a block in his writing on one particular year, a year with 3 significant events that represented a coming together of strands of his life, a realization of key points in the identity of the man we all knew, me as a father, for many of you as a friend. The year I'm talking about was long before I knew him. It was 1959. My uncles, Aaron's younger brothers, often talk about a particular controversy occurring in southern Manitoba that year. It had something to do with religion and education and the firing of a teacher. I won't give you the details because it would take too long, and also I can't remember them. If you are interested, you could ask my uncles. I'm sure they could tell you. They remember in particular, though, that my father, a young man then, rose and spoke out of principle and conviction at a public meeting. No one who knew my father later would be surprised by that. What I didn't realize until I talked to him last summer was that this was the first time he did it. He had just then developed the confidence in his convictions to stand up for what he believed. That confidence served him well through the years. I learned from him a sense of justice and that some things are worth speaking up for. The same year that he stepped into his first major controversy, he finished his education and took a job as interim editor at the Canadian Mennonite. This was not his first job, but it was a step up in terms of the intensity of negotiation with different constituencies. It required major sociability. I'm not sure whether he learned that quickly on the job or whether he'd already developed it from his travels and education. I always knew my father as a quiet man, but one who had a really very large number of friends. He had little time for small talk, but could introduce himself to strangers, make fast friends, and within 5 minutes, learn their religious heritage. My nephew Nathan says that one thing he learned from his opa was that it was okay to introduce yourself to strangers, especially in farming communities. It was the third event that year that affected me the most, though, because this was also the year that he met and married my mother. After that year, his life was twined with hers, and life decisions became joint ones. Shortly after that, he became a father, first to my brother, and 6 years later to me. Family had long been important to him. As the eldest brother in a clan of 15, he'd already had first-hand experience with kids and teenagers. I sometimes wonder if his years as older brother were a dry run at parenting, and my brother and I got to be the beneficiary of his experience. As a father, he was kind-hearted and generous. Though he loved an argument, we hardly ever argued at home. And when we did, it wasn't about anything that mattered, just the occasional intellectual sparring once we were old enough to do that. His love was evident to us in his unflinching support. Neither my brother nor I were really naughty kids or rebellious teenagers, but I always had the sense that if I did do something really bad, he would let me know how he felt about the decision or action out of principle, but his love would not be changed. And his love bred generosity, both within his family and for the causes that mattered to him. I have long admired his generous spirit. Of course, in the last some years, I have also had the good fortune of seeing my father in the role of grandfather. The babies and toddlers were always drawn to their opa with his open manner and his Santa Claus beard. As they got older, they shared in the small moments of joy. Nathan learning his way around the tractor, Emma leading her opa through the streets of Toulouse, Sylvia quickly joining in with the other adults at the card table for rook, and Bridget delighting every bit as much as he did, perhaps more vocally, in the perfection of a bowl of fresh red raspberries and ice cream. Raspberries. How can I have a tribute to my father without a mention of his passion for berries, the raspberries that he grew and the chokecherries he foraged? He wrote recently of his failed attempt to pass on to his grandchildren his passion for and skill at foraging for chokecherries along the country roads of KW. I don't remember him going on foraging outings when I was a child, but that could just be because I didn't think to notice them. I do remember some impromptu pit stops when wild grapes or wild berries were spotted on the side of the road or hiking trail. More, though, I remember coming home as a young adult to little jars of heavenly chokecherry jam and tales of adventure and daring-do in the harvesting of said cherries from trees and bushes that may or may not have been on private property. Oh, public property. Some of you have been lucky enough to have sampled his chokecherry jam. I was shortly married when my dad gave us a jar of this jam. My husband, quite the connoisseur of jams, took one bite of his toast with jam and announced to me that this was the best jam I would ever taste. So far, that's been true. This year was the first summer of many when he did not pick chokecherries with the intention of making jam. This was because it was a bad harvest year, not because he was slowing down. My father was not ready to die. He still had many plans for the future and had planned to forage again next year. Though he'd been a little weak with digestive complaints over the last few years, he was active and vital until Saturday, when he had a very sudden onset of pneumonia and was admitted into the hospital. On Sunday, we could still talk to him, and he could have short conversations. It was clear even then that he did not intend to die then. But on Sunday night, his breathing got worse. He fell asleep and didn't wake up again. For the last 24 hours of his life, we took turns sitting with him. I had the privilege of holding his hand as he took his last breath. It was beautiful.
Brother Mark Morton stands innocently in the church basement during coffee hour when he is approached by Brother Aaron Klassen. Aaron proceeds to ask an incredibly theologically profound question. Mark, why do mice immediately go to heaven when they die? Mark panics and realizes that no PhD prepares someone for the likes of Brother Aaron. He shrugs his shoulders in defeat, and Brother Aaron says, "It's because they love cheese us." Yes, Aaron had a way of connecting with all of us, regardless of age, background, experience. He has been called an elder statesman, one of the pillars of our church. This week, I reflected on our friendship and tried to distill what it was about Aaron that allowed him to be endeared and respected by so many of us. I also asked several people about their experiences with Aaron. As I listened to the stories and recalled my own, some strong themes emerged. The first theme was that of someone who never really grew up. Aaron had the curiosity of a 2-year-old, the mischief of a 13-year-old, and the adventure of a 20-year-old, but the wisdom of a 90-year-old. Look at his diverse career path. He'd make the Gen X's and millennials blush. This curiosity and passion for learning endeared him to the younger generation of the church. I remember experiencing it firsthand when Aaron and I, in one of our many coffee hour discussions, started talking about investing money. I soon learned that Aaron did his own investing because he felt he could outperform his own financial advisor. I asked Aaron if he would be willing to share his wisdom with me. He invited me over to his house. Expecting just to chat over coffee, I was surprised to see several of notes neatly organized on the dining room table. I knew I was going to see Professor Aaron in action that day. The lecture started with an all-important disclaimer. I, Aaron Klassen, have no responsibility for any stupidity that John Neufeld will embark on as a result of this lesson. With that out of the way, we could proceed. After reviewing the basic notions and principles of investing and resources that Aaron used, he took me into the office where he showed me the software that he used to do all his investing online. Take a moment to picture this. A young 30-year-old with a business degree who prided himself being in tech savvy was being taken to school by an 80-year-old on how to invest online. But there was a moment of redemption for me. As I looked at the software, I noticed one stock in particular had a fairly sharp upswing and had done very well. When I inquired about this, Aaron, with his signature chuckle and smile, said, "Oh yeah, I meant to invest in one stock, and it sounded a lot like that one, and I guess I accidentally clicked the mouse on that one. But, as you could see, I did all right with it anyways." The second theme emerged for me when I reflected on our conversation after the church budget was announced at the general meeting last year. Although Aaron and I agreed on many things philosophically, we had a different viewpoint on the implementation of the church budget. I shared with Aaron that I agreed with the proposed budget and that it reflected the current giving patterns of younger generations. Later that week, I had the opportunity to have coffee with Helen and Aaron at their place in Luther Village. The first thing that happened was I was thanked for taking the time to share my opinion with them. Aaron will never be accused of lacking in opinion or ideas. Aaron thrived on ideas. He loved developing them in discussion with others. He loved sharing his ideas, and he loved having them challenged. Aaron was incredibly bright, had a lot of rich life experience, but there was no air about him. He treated you at the same level. As one of Aaron's friends pointed out, Aaron might have disagreed with you, but what I respected most about him is that he never said, "I'm taking my marbles and I'm going home now." Sitting in adult Sunday school with Aaron will be a rich memory for many of us here at Sterling. The third theme was Aaron's passion for his faith and the church, both local and abroad. He was unapologetic about his faith. Why was Aaron considered a leader in the church? Several individuals that crossed paths with Aaron through conference work, MCC, MEDA, and other church-related activities all commented that Aaron was non-conventional. He was on the edge. This at times is threatening to others in the church. However, Aaron's commitment, humility, and humor allowed him to challenge us. His humility, humor, and commitment came through about a month ago when Aaron shared his testimony during a Sunday morning worship service. After that, one of our youth shared that it was so great to hear Aaron say that he still hasn't figured it out all regarding his faith after all these years. Faith was something that we continuously grapple with, something that can bring joy, and calls us to serve our neighbors. Recently, the Canadian Mennonite, or a few years ago, hired a new editor, Dick Benner, who was from the States. Aaron, along with his friend Jack, would get together with Dick and share stories, connect him with people in the community. And this, to me, was just another example of how what Aaron did behind the scenes, little things that he did to help others, things that he didn't have to do, but he did because he cared for the church and for its people. And in speaking with Dick this week, he reflected on Aaron's integrity, thoughtfulness, and authenticity. So, Brother Aaron,